Hello, everybody, and welcome. Hope you're having a good day under the circumstances, obviously. Definitely strange times, and seems to be getting stranger each day, but we'll be okay. And that's, I think, the first important message to share is to not be frazzled, to not let panic enter us, to ultimately own our emotions and not let our emotions own us. One of the greatest challenges in life is to own your emotions. What I mean is that you are in charge of every feeling you have, or rather what you do with the feeling. So today I want to teach you a little piece of Tanya. I actually studied it yesterday with two teenagers. One of them was a son of somebody on the group today. And we spoke about what's within human control and what's outside human control. Can a human being ever become more than they are now, and how can they do it? So one of the big insights of Tanya is that you'll never change your impulse, but you could change what you do with your impulse. In other words, you're not going to wake up one day and suddenly not have an impulse to be jealous if you're jealous by nature. It might soften a bit, but the impulse will still be there. The impulse for addiction, for alcohol, whatever weakness we have, will be there. The battle of life is not to negate our impulses. The battle of life is to make sure that we don't give our impulses too much power. And where do our impulses have the most power? Where do they manifest, and where could we control them? In three areas: in what we think, in what we speak, and in what we do. In other words, you could have a feeling right now. You just heard this morning another 20 people who have COVID. I found out today a bunch of others. So at that moment, you have this pit in your stomach, or you have this gut-wrenching drop of your heart. You literally feel like it. And that's your feeling, that's your impulse, and that's human. But the question is, then do I allow that feeling to occupy my headspace? Now, there's times and spaces to work through our feelings, but not in the middle of a day when we have a lot of things going on. Sometimes it's about pushing the feeling off to later. For example, I'm doing a funeral, and right now I'm falling apart inside. It's not the time for me to fall apart. If I come home later that night at 8 o'clock at night, I sit down and collapse, that's fine. I'm releasing my emotions. The question is when. The ability to sit there saying, okay, I have this impulse, I have this emotion that has to be dealt with, but not now. Now I need to control my mind. Now I'm in front of my kids. Now I'm preparing supper. Now I'm a shearer, whatever it is. Now is not the time. You know, I'm a big believer in therapy. I don't have to believe in therapy. It works. It's not a faith. I know it works. At the same time, with all my faith in it, I also know that not every minute of every day is a time to release emotions. There's places, in front of a therapist, end of the day, etc., with a good friend. But often we don't regulate. That's the word. We don't regulate our emotions well. And we allow it to then take over our mind. So you're in the middle of a day, you have a lot of important things to do, and you allow your mind to be consumed with your feelings. But just because you're feeling something doesn't mean you have to think about it. Understand what I'm saying? Just because you have an impulse that sits there saying, hey, let's go there. Let's occupy the mind with that thing. You don't have to go there. You could decide what your mind will think about at this moment. And if your mind is distracted from that feeling at this moment and you're allowing your mind to go where it needs to go, then you have controlled yourself. Again, there's times for feelings, and there's times where you allow the feelings to raise up into your consciousness, into your mind, into what you're thinking, because ultimately feelings are subconscious. Only when you bring them to the mind and you bring them to the mouth do you actually verbalize them and give them identity. But the question is, when do we do it? Especially now that we're home all day, etc. What I'm finding one of the struggles right now is for people to actually regulate when to feel. It's a simple thing, but I think it's extremely important. There's a time to feel, and there's not a time to feel. In other words, there's a time to do. Obviously, you're feeling subconsciously. I know I have a very strong subconscious. My subconscious is stronger than my conscious. I feel like my subconscious works 10 times harder than my conscious. But at the same time, I can't allow my subconscious to dominate my conscious at the time that I have something to do. I have a kid that's crying. I have a thing going on at home. I have a share to give, whatever it is. At that moment, I have to be able to have the ability to sit there putting the emotion on the side and regulate and say, not now. And this is something we teach our kids. It's very obvious. You teach your kid, yes, you want something and you really feel that you need it right now, but self-regulate, control yourself, have patience, and deal with it later. But often the same messages we tell our children, we forget ourselves. I remember when I was a few years ago, I used to watch this American TV show once in a while called Are You Smarter Than the Fifth Grader? And pretty much the premise of the show is they ask adults questions that kids learn from grade 1 to 5 and see if the adults know better than the kids. And if the adult knows better, they get $1 million at this. It's like a whatever, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire format. And I thought to myself, I used to enjoy the show. It's just cute what kind of questions are asked. I thought to myself, do I keep the same habits and rituals and premises that I taught to kids as a fifth grader? In other words, am I more regulated than a fifth grader? Am I more control of my emotions? Do I have more impulse control? Do I have more anger management? Do I have more self-regulation technique than a fifth grader? And often the answer is no. Often adults are not very different than kids in that area. In other words, the adults will fall apart because I want to be angry right now and I want to scream at you. But yeah, there's kids right here in the house right now. Maybe now's not the time to scream at your husband. Maybe. But I'm angry now. But what did you just tell your kid 10 minutes ago? To control yourself. I know you're angry. Deal with it later. So why can't we? Our kid comes back from school and sits there saying, I'm so jealous. Danny came to school today with a brand new phone. What do you tell your kid? You tell your kid, don't be jealous. Look at what you have in life, right? You don't sit there saying, oh, well done, Joey. Stay jealous. That's the way to do it, boy. Stay angry. No, you encourage your child to develop a way of dealing with jealousy. And yet, I see somebody driving a car. I see somebody, whatever that seems to have a life that's better than me, and I indulge my jealousy. Again, I can't control the fact that I will feel an impulse for jealousy. That's human. But I can control the fact that I don't have to indulge that thought. The second that thought comes to me, I'll say, okay, it's nonsense. Just go, leave me. Let me focus on better things. Imagine we behaved the way we teach our children to behave. They often say, practice, don't preach. Maybe the thing is practice what you preach. In other words, fine, you're preaching to your kids or your grandkids all day about certain behaviors. How many of them do you live up to? And sometimes I catch myself. I'm about to, tell my child off on something. And I ask myself and I say, Levi, you're not much better in that area. So the kid's having the 8th brownie that day. Like, come on, you have to watch your weight. So you have to watch your health. Meanwhile, I had 12 brownies that day. So it's not right for me to come over and tell him that. I could sit there saying, hey, boy, or hey, hey, my daughter, daddy's little girl, listen, we're both struggling with something and we both have to learn discipline, but it's we. But me to sit there saying, how dare you have your 8th brownie today? 1 second, dude, like, what did you just do? I mean, like, before this year started, I was eating this, chips. But if I see my kid now eating something unhealthy at lunchtime, come on, You can do better than that. They say the story about a person, a student who wants to be a lawyer. And then at some stage, he went into the ministry and decided to become a rabbi. And someone asked him why. And he said, I realized that I rather preach rather than practice. I prefer preaching over practice. Yeah, you know, I think we should listen to ourselves more, because what comes out of our mouth very often is our deepest values. We want our kid to be patient. We want our kid to be manners. Don't stand while you eat. And what were you doing last night at 12 o'clock at night? Etc., etc., etc. In other words, to teach ourselves the things that we teach our children, especially what we started to share with the idea of self-regulation, the idea of discipline and control, to not allow myself to not allow a monster to take me over, because ultimately that's what my emotions are. They're important. They're a monster that have to be dealt with. And some emotions aren't a monster. Some emotions are beautiful, but very often they're this all-consuming feeling that's going to drown you. And the tsunami's coming at you. And the question is, what do you do now? What do you do with that? Because the fact is, COVID maybe doesn't come into our doors, although I know so many people who haven't walked out of the house once and they're still getting COVID. But you have this imaginary wall. In South Africa, it's not imaginary. You have a wall. And you're protecting yourself from COVID, but you're not protecting yourself from the information that's coming to your phone, from the phone calls, from the WhatsApps. You're not protecting yourself, and a lot of things are coming at you. And what do I do with that? What do I do with that? The Tanya has a term, mo'ach shalit al halev. The mind controls, is the ruler of the heart. In other words, the conscious mind tells the heart when I will allow you the space to consume me. I'll give you time. I'll give you time to verbalize your feelings, but not now. Now is the time to do. Often we've confused the times. And one of the big, I remember when I read King Solomon's words in the book of Proverbs, in Kohelet actually, Ecclesiastes, he writes the words, it's the wisest man who ever lived, right, King Solomon. He says, there's a time to love, there's a time to hate, there's a time to fight, there's a time for peace. I thought to myself, really, what a rocket scientist he must have been, Solomon. Wow, like you really figured that one out, huh? There's a time for war, time for peace. But the truth is, it is rocket science, because to live that way is hard. To sit there knowing, okay, what's the time now? What does the time demand of me? One of the things I do as a speaker, and I hope it helps me to be a half-decent speaker, is I try, before I go into a zone, it's a funeral, a wedding, shir, I try to give myself a little time before to sit there saying, okay, what's the space? What's the space I'm walking into? And sometimes I don't know it till I walk in. So then once I walk in, I have to give myself time to feel the space, because ultimately there's a time for everything. And usually a bad speech is by definition the wrong message in the wrong place. In other words, it could have been the right message, but it's the wrong place. It's a bad fit. And to really be in tune to what the time demands, to listen to the time and sit there saying, okay, what is needed from me now? Now, yeah, that's draining. By the end of the day, it's absolutely draining to have to regulate yourself that way, but that's what it means to be human. An animal just does what it wants that moment. A baby does that, whatever they want at the moment. An adult regulates. But when I look around and I talk to people and I hear about circumstances and family dynamics, we could do work on that area. We can. Sit there saying, okay, I'm angry at what you just said, but I will control what comes out of my mouth. I found that some people, not some people, many people, adults, when they're angry, they will say things that are so mean, like ridiculously mean. And then they expect us to forgive them because, what do you mean? I was angry. Really? There's a principle in the Talmud regarding cows. I'm going to give you an example from the Talmud that you might think is so abstract, because who has oxes these days? Oxen. But listen to this and you'll hear the principle in your life. There's a halachic principle in the Talmud of Baba Kama. It's one of the deep tractates of the Talmud. It goes like this. If you own an ox who goes out and gores an ox, a cow, another animal, the first time that your ox does that, you have to pay 50% of the damages. Because ultimately, how are you supposed to know that your ox is a goring ox? Not all oxes do that. The second time it happens, we still only charge you 50% because we didn't, maybe that was a once-off. But by the third time, it's called no longer a good ox. It's called a ox that's a muad. It's set up. It's responsible now. You're responsible for this ox, and therefore you have to pay full cost of its damages. Comes the Talmud and says, what about a human being? And it uses the expression Adam muad la'olam. The human being from the first time constantly is always responsible for full damages. In other words, there's no such a thing saying, oh, it's the first chance. No, you're constantly responsible. So much so, according to the Talmud, even if you sleepwalk and you cause damages in your sleep, you're still responsible. 24 hours a day, you're responsible for every single action that came through you. That's the way the Talmud sees us. We're constantly responsible. In other words, every word that came out of our mouth, we're responsible for. We have to own. I don't care how angry I'm feeling, and I don't care how agitated I'm feeling, and I don't care how angry I'm feeling. In other words, I care, and there's room to deal with it. But sometimes we just feel like, hey, I'm stressed, and therefore I could just say the meanest thing to my spouse. Or I'm stressed and I could fight with my children over nonsense. And I'm like, 1 second, you want to do it, fine, do it, but don't justify it. There's a very big difference between acknowledging I'm not perfect and that's fine, to saying, no, what I did was okay. It's a big difference. I'm not saying we have to all become perfect. Yeah, sometimes our emotions will own us. But this idea that 1 second, it's okay, I was angry, deal with it. I'm allowed to say whatever I want when I'm angry. I'm entitled. I'm allowed to slam a glass across the wall because, hey, I'm angry, I'm emotional. I'm allowed to send a nasty message or a nasty text or call you on the phone and rip into you. I can do whatever I want because ultimately I was angry and you angered me. I was having a conversation with one of my children a few days ago, and I was saying, nobody can anger you. You allow yourself to get angry. But he made me angry. She made me. No, they didn't. They did something and you decided to get angry about it. I didn't decide. Yes, you did. What do you mean? I didn't sit there and think to myself, should I get angry? Yes, but you could have thought to yourself, I don't want to get angry. In other words, you had that choice. You had that choice. You didn't realize you have a choice. Just because you don't realize you have a choice and you think it's automatic, you say something nasty, I get angry. It's not automatic. It's a choice. And I think in this time of COVID, as it's getting more intense and it's becoming more and more stressful, and I'm hearing from more and more people, the 4 months, the buildup, the amount of people that are getting sick anyway, it's like it's building this absolute tension. I would just encourage us to remember during this time that we are still in control of ourselves and that we are responsible, no matter how stressed we are, for any word that comes out of our mouth, for any thought that occupies our mind. Again, that's not responsible as in you're going to hell. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying as a moral responsibility for me to wear the mantle of an adult, to wear the mantle of a human being. It means I have to take the responsibilities that come with it. And one of it is to train myself that I am in control, that my conscious mind, that my free choice, rather, that's another way of putting it, that I'm always given choices, that there's always a choice in front of me. No matter how much I feel pulled to one side of the equation, I have absolute choice. Now, again, this is not rocket science, what I'm saying. I mean, so many people said before. I know Viktor Frankl talks about it a lot, and many others. But it's something I think in this time that we have to remind ourselves, because tension is building, sadness, anger, frustration, loss, whatever, feelings, grief, etc. And in this experience of, the world is no longer the same, and every day it seems like it's going to be taking longer and longer till the world is normal again, etc. In that overwhelming new world, there's me. And I have a heart, and I have a mind, I have a body, and I take up X amount of space in this world. And I can't control 99.9999999% of the universe. But there's a tiny part of the universe, my 6 feet and X amount of kilo, that's me, that I take up space. And in me, I have to control. I have to dominate. I have to be in charge. I have to know who's boss. And the news cycle is not the boss. And COVID is not the boss. And my finances are not my boss. I'm in control. I'm the CEO of my life. And when I say I, not my ego, my free choice. God made human beings with a gift that no other creature in this world has. Choice. Every second is choice. And that's, I believe, the way we have to live our lives. Choices, constantly choices. And I think during the era of COVID, we're becoming mindful of that. Should I touch my nose? Should I, put on the mask now? Should I drive like this? Should I go to the store? Should I not go to the store? When I'm in the store, how much time should I spend in the store? I just went shopping a few minutes ago to Maishi's. Everything was like a million thoughts because of COVID and because of the ramifications. Should I go to the store? Should I get it delivered? What's the difference anyway? I enjoy the shopping experience, blah, blah, blah. How long do I talk to people when I greet them? Should I stay in this area too long or move quickly because the virus won't catch me? I don't know. Some of the stuff are nonsense, some of the stuff are wise. But ultimately, that's what we are. We're living much more mindfully. But that's not necessarily a curse. Mindful. Choices. That's what mindfulness is. 1 second. I had a choice. I didn't just have to go to the store. I made a choice to go to the store. I made a choice. Am I going to buy for 2 days? I'm going to buy for a week, whatever, all this nonsense. But the point is activating choice. I remember talking in this group years ago about this concept of choice and literally teaching children the power of choice, to sit there pointing out to kids, this moment you have a choice. We used to fight with our kids every day about baths. I want my kids to have at least a bath once in 2 days. Always fighting. Anyways, at some stage, one of my kids comes up with this brilliant idea. We don't want a bath at night. We want a bath in the morning. Fine. So each time it's bath time, I give them the choice. I say tonight or tomorrow morning. And I never have to fight with them again. They wake up before me and they're already in the bath. Now, what's the point? The point is, I just gave them back choice. And that's what people need, and that's what people want. But as adults, we don't appreciate how important it is. Just you chose that. Don't tell me you blew your fuse. You didn't blow your fuse. You lost control. You gave control over to the anger within you. That's not just like, oh, sorry, just forgive me because that's just what happens. No. I forgive you because ultimately we're human. But don't excuse it by saying, hey, it just happens. It just happens. I slapped you across the face. It doesn't just happen. No, that's what abusers always say. I really love you, honey. I really, 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 for that moment, I lost control. And therefore, I gave your black and blue on your cheek. Really? Is that an excuse? No, you're responsible. You crossed the red line. I don't care how angry you are, and I don't care what anger management issues you have. You pick a hand on your spouse, you're out. Why? Because you crossed the red line. And I think each and every one of us has to ask ourselves, what are our red lines? In our moments of deepest darkness, what are things that we will not say? Things that we'll never do? Like, I literally had somebody describing to me growing up in a home where pots and pans were flying at each other. I think to myself, like, really, that should be a red line, not to throw pots and pans at a couple. I mean, it's 2 adults in the house. Throwing pots and pans, just, it just seems a bit much. Now, I get it, damaged people, they have their issues. I hear it loud and clear, fine. It's red lines, no? And for me, one of the gifts of Judaism and growing up in religion in general is this idea from a young age, you're taught that concept, there's right and wrong, there's red lines. I'm not saying I never cross my red lines, but it's ingrained in me. Don't go there. God said you can't go there. Don't break that Shabbos and don't eat that food. And what it's telling my kid, like one of my kids right now, as I came home with dairy and meat. I really want yogurt, but I really want pierogan. So which one should you take? You can't. If you have the yogurt, you have to wait an hour. For the pierogan, you have the pierogan, you're going to have to wait 6 hours for the yogurt. What are you going to do? And at that moment, that kid learned a drop of what discipline is. I have to make a choice. I can't have both, at least not in this moment. I will have to make a choice and I'll have to control myself. And yes, I think we have to give a little more leeway to our children and to ourselves during this time. I'm not saying we have to be absolutely, stiff upper lip or waspy. I'm not saying that. But I do think that during this time, we have to remember how much ownership we have on ourselves. And not forget that even in a world gone mad, I am in control of my world. The world cannot control me. Because if I live with that mindfulness, if I live with that thought every single day that tells me I'm in control, then I feel empowered to face my day. I don't feel like the whole world is a tsunami and I am just a little piece of a blade of grass versus an entire ocean. No, I'm here. I'm standing. I'm here. It's okay. I don't know how the day's going to turn out. I don't know who's going to come up with COVID today. I don't know if I have COVID. I don't know. But here's what I do know. I'm in control of what I'm going to do today. I'm in control of what I'm going to say today. I'm in control of what I'm going to think today. And when that thought comes into me, that fear, that panic, that phobia, whatever I have, whatever struggles I have, at that moment, I could tell myself, if it's not the right time, pause. Pause. No, we're not going there. I can't afford to go there now. I can't afford to walk into that universe. And I'm not going to go there with you. Like somebody, I started going, I mentioned this, I started going back on Facebook and gosh, every single day there's 50 posts about farm murders and farm murders are terrible. And then there's 50 posts about racism and etc. And you just at some stage, I actually say, off or I'm unfriending you. If you're the guy that's posting on your stuff scandals, you could watch my stuff, I'm not watching your stuff. And literally, I kind of unfriend everybody the moment they post angry scam. And again, yes, farm murders have to be dealt with, but it's too much for me. I can't sit there reading about how this girl was raped and that guy was strangled and that guy's that. I can't do that. And then tell myself control. I'm putting myself in an unbearable situations where my emotions are becoming too dominant. So I have to pace myself and say, no, I don't want that. I know it's true, but there's 50 million worthy causes in this world. And I can only fight the causes I can. Because if I go beyond that, I'm not going to even fight the causes I was. I can't pick every cause. And I can't read about every tragedy in this world. I can't. Some of us maybe can. But each one of us has to know where that limit is and don't go beyond that limit. Because you go beyond that limit, you will fall into a cave. Unfortunately, when we give the emotions too much stimulation, then the battle between control and emotions becomes a very uneven battle. The emotions are so dominant. And part of controlling my emotions is making sure that I don't feed it too much anxiety. You don't have to watch the news every single night if it's causing you anxiety. Pretty much you know what's going to happen. Shuls are not opening anytime soon. COVID is rampant. A lot of people are getting sick. Stay safe. Nobody knows anything what's going on. In New York, they're already worried that people who had COVID previously might get it again because the antibodies don't last. In other words, we just don't know. But here's what I do know. I don't want to be overwhelmed. I know that. I wake up today, Wednesday morning, and I say, I want to have a good day. I don't want to have a day where I finish the day in tears, feeling sorry for myself and the world. There's space for that, but not today. Not today. I have important things to do with my life. I can't afford that. So to summarize what I believe the message of today's share was, we cannot underestimate our own obligation to control our own environment. What goes on in our head, what goes out of our mouth, and what we do. We were given by God absolute control. What we do with it is our choice. But there's not a moment of the day that we are told by God, hey, go rampant, it's fine. Just say whatever you want, it's all good. It's not. Regulation, especially in this time that our whole routine is knocked out, that we don't have the routine of life, the friends we bump into and have coffee with, and the run or the jog or the this or etc. We have to create new spaces of regulation. Otherwise, these months will not be months that we'll look back on fondly, but tragically. And I believe that, yes, there's parts of COVID that will look back as a tragedy once it's all over. But I pray that I can look back at this time period, whatever it's going to be, fondly, as a time that I was tested, and 9 out of 10 times I passed the test, or 8 out of 10 times. Because ultimately, I was given one thing in this world to control, and that's not my wife, it's not my kids, it's not my soul, it's me. And all I'm judged by Hashem is, Levi, did you control your own life? Were you in control of your own universe? And I hope I could tell God that, yes, you've challenged me. Yes, you've put me in very difficult situations throughout life, as you did to so many others. But on the majority of times, I took ownership. Shkoyach, everybody. Thank you so much.